All right, everybody, this is a guided walkthrough for Natas level 15 from the Natas CTF Labs from overthewire.org. Okay, so in this level, what we have an application that checks the username. So for example, if we do username test, check existence, this user does not exist. So what we want is we want the password for the next level, and the next level's user is Natas16. So if we type in Natas16 and then check existence, it says this user exists. Okay, so in the source code, and we do have source code for how the application is coded, we're going to see over here that first of all, it tells us what is in the database. It says create table users, username, 64 characters, default null, password. Well, var character 64, this is the maximum number of characters. This isn't how long the usernames and passwords are actually going to be, but the maximum number that you can input in this table is 64. So we know that there's a table called users, and we know that there's a username column, and there's a password column. This is very important for the injection we're going to be doing. So we're going to see here that it's going to do an SQL query, select star from usernames where username equals something, and that's it. So select from usernames where username equals something. If the number of rows that is returned is greater than 0, it says this user exists. Otherwise, it says this user doesn't exist. So the only thing we can get from the application is whether or not a user exists in the system. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to use that true or false output from the application to do an SQL injection attack. And let's talk about how we do that. So this is Natas level 15. And in this level, we're doing SQL injection, Boolean injection. So Boolean injection, we'll talk about what that does. The application takes in user input and compares it against usernames in the database. If the name exists, it outputs this user exists. So we can abuse this code to enumerate other data from the database by feeding the application true and false statements. So this method of SQL injection is called Boolean, or true or false, injection. So when we do, because the application isn't filtering against SQL injection, we can basically put in SQL statements and SQL code in our user input. And we can check for an additional column, that is the password, and check if the first character is the letter A or the letter B, etc., etc. And if it is, then the statement should return true. So this is, for example, if we do this payload, and what this does is it runs the substring function looking for the password column, the first character, starting at the first character and ending at the first character, and checking for the letter A. And like the previous level, we also comment out the rest of the query. If we go over to the application and try this out, so Natas16 and substring password, etc., etc., checking for the letter A. This is going to say the user doesn't exist if the first character in the password is not A. So check existence, the user doesn't exist. So remember that if we just send Natas16 and check for this user, it says this user exists. So what we want to do is we want to send a payload. Let me get the payload. What we want to do is we want to check each one of these letters until we actually hit a match, which is going to say that this user exists. So if this is, we can do this letter by letter. We can check B, we can check C, I'm pretty sure that the first character for this password is the letter H. This user exists. So we know that the first character in the password is the letter H. So what we would do from here is we would check password substring starting at 1, ending at 2, and then we check HA. Are the first two characters of the password HA? This user does not exist. So this is, we could do this manually, and if we do this manually, we could be at this for hours and hours. Let's talk a little bit more about this. So we determined that if we determine that the first character is A, then we can check if the next character is B, etc., until the entire password is found. So the problem here is that the password is actually 32 characters long because all the other passwords for these levels are 32 characters long, and we don't have the patience to do this manually. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a script, a Python script, to automate this process. So we can use the following script to brute force the password. So we're just going to grab the Python script here. And if you're wondering what the Python script is, you can find it over at this link. I'm going to copy the script. And before we run the script, we'll go over what the script does. So let's see. We'll call this natas15.py. Paste in the script. And what are we doing inside this Python code? So we use the requests module. We use the string module. We define our variables. We've got our URL that we're contacting. We've got our username that we're logging in as and our password. Okay, so the next thing we do is we need to provide a list of characters to test, all numbers and letters. In this case, we're going to use the string module to use all the ASCII letters and all the digits. So these are the characters we're checking against. Okay, and then storage for the extracted password, we're going to initialize a string for the extracted password, which starts empty, but we're going to start populating it. We create a session, which we're going to be connecting to, and then we're going to do our SQL injection. So we're going to print off a message starting password extraction. We're going to run a bunch of for loops. So for position and range, 1 to 33. So we've got 32 characters in the password. We're going to search for each one of these characters. We're going to use this payload, username equals Natas16 and substring. It's basically the same SQL injection that we did manually, but in this case, we're doing it in a script. So if we receive this user exists, then we're going to move on to the next character, and we're going to add the letter that we found to the extracted password. So finally, if it's able to find all 32 characters, it's going to print out complete password is this. So let's go ahead and save out the script, and we'll run the script. So run Python natas15.py. So starting password extraction, it's going through, and after it finds each one of these letters, it's going to move on to the next position and find the next character. So this should run through in about a minute or so. So we're just going to wait until it finishes up with the with the Boolean SQL injection. Okay, character number 29, we only have a couple more to go. And we get the complete password. So if for some reason we didn't know the length of the password, we would write in the script that if it wasn't able to get any characters from the password, then it stops. But in this case, we know that the password is 32 characters, and this is the password for the next level. Okay, everybody, this was a guided walkthrough for level number 15 from the Natas CTF game from Overthewire.org. If you enjoyed this guided walkthrough, please click on the like and subscribe buttons on the video and leave a comment underneath the video. But until next time, HackerFrogs out.
Hey there, HackerFrogs! Are you enjoying this workshop? Learning new concepts and skills? If so, there's a way you can support the channel, and it's totally free. Just click on the subscribe button below the video. Also, click on the like button. And if you have questions or comments on this workshop, please leave them below the video. Thanks for listening. And now, back to our scheduled programming.